Hello everybody, this is Jasmina, and here I'm going to talk about the mitigation of untimely stars. This is a more expanded version of what I've talked about before, but I think it's worth it because I'm talking about more stuff. Now, the mitigation of untimely stars is done elementally. That is adding an element. It is quite easy to do when you have a single element. When you have two or more untimely elements or untimely stars, it gets much more complicated, and I'm going to talk about that here. But of course, we start out with all stars have an element associated with them, and that element tells you how to mitigate. There are two stars, the star 1 and the star 9, that are the only stars that have that element. Star 1 has water, star 9 has fire. No other stars have water or fire. We have three stars that are Earth stars, the 2, 5, and 8. And then we have two wood stars, the 3 and 4, and two metal stars, the 6 and 7. And in general, one of the two stars, when we have these two, is considered generally timely, but of course it depends on which school you follow. And for the three Earths, there's really only one that's generally considered timely, which is the 8, number 8. So, but due to timeliness, that is due to the period in which we are living, all of these stars have a period of time in which they are timely. Now, when we treat untimely stars, we do it, of course, elementally, and the general method that is preferred is the weakening method. We weaken the element of the untimely star. Now, you can also control it. There is a controlling cycle. It does work faster, but it's usually, in general, more painful. It's usually more emotionally painful. Sometimes it's possible it could be physically painful, but that's kind of rare. But it's really faster, so it's kind of painful, but it's in the short run. It's not a long-term thing. For example, if you are having some sort of relationship issues with someone who's you're intimate with, somebody close to you, and there are things that you're having problems with, and you let them slide for a while. But it gets to the point where you say, well, something has to change. You can do it in a weakening method, which may take a year, maybe more, for the relationship to considerably change. Maybe the relationship stops. Or you could do it with the controlling method, which could be much faster. It could happen much quicker, and there can be maybe a big argument or something like this. And so it might be more painful, at least for one of the two people. But in the end, the same thing would happen. So it's just a matter of timing and how much uncomfortableness that you are willing to put up with. And of course, sometimes this could, at least in theory, be a little dangerous. So especially if we're talking about a relationship and the other person is not mentally stable, and if you're living in the United States, guns are way too plentiful. You could be shot or even lose your life. Let's hope that doesn't happen, but that happens so often in this country, in the United States. I do live in the United States. So, you have to kind of know the other person to know how to deal with this if it is a relationship problem. And a lot of things have to do with relationship problems. That could also be with your boss, could be with your coworkers. Relationship problems are a big key in life, I think. And the better your relationships are, usually the happier you are. Now, When we look at the flying star chart and the purple white charts, we do look at timeliness in those two charts, but they are looked at separately. That is to say, timely stars in the flying star chart are basically unaffected by untimely stars in the purple white chart. So we don't mix those two because they actually have a different effect on your life. The flying star chart basically tells you about your outside opportunities. So a sector in your house that has really good stars, that's a very good place to have a home office or to study from. And that allows you to gain the knowledge or do really good work. However, if the purple-white chart happens to be untimely there, and the purple-white chart changes every year, the flying star chart does not, you could be, certain years you could be quite unhappy about what's happening at work. But you still do really good work, and that's what's important, at least when it comes to earning money. So they are looked at separately. When it comes to the annual and month stars, they give a general energy to various sectors. More or less, they basically tell you how likely there is for problems to arise. If the annual month stars are untimely, it's more likely if you're using that sector, more problems will arise. And if they're timely, it's more like you will have a much smoother path. But it's not like they destroy stars or do anything strange like in Batsa we have transformations, all that stuff. None of that happens here. It's just how these all the energies together work. So most people can remember the growth cycle. Now we don't use the growth cycle in mitigation, but the growth cycle, once you know this, and it is pretty straightforward, you can recreate all the other cycles and it can make it easy for you to remember it. So of course wood burns, so wood creates fire basically. It's one of the easier things to burn. Fire creates ash, which is a lot like earth. We get metal from the earth, so we take it from the earth. And metal, there's various ways people talk about this. For me, I think of the metal pumps at a campsite because I camped a lot as a kid. And we used to, one of the first things we did when we went into a campground to camp, the three of us would run to the water station and we'd see how many times you had to pump to get the water to come up. And it varied quite a bit from place to place, but this was one of our things. So I think of metal as producing water. Now, it is also true that since metal has a very high heat transfer, when it starts cooling down at night, it's the first thing that gets cold because it gives up its heat very well. And so dew will form first on metal. And so that's how most of the practitioners talk about, because I assume they've never been camping, or at least not very often. And of course, water produces wood. You need water to grow plants. It's as simple as that. Now, it doesn't matter which element you put on top. It could be any one of these, but this is a clockwise cycle. Usually, if you put them in this order, it's a clockwise cycle. And it's quite natural to remember this. Now, the weakening cycle is just it goes the other way. It goes counterclockwise. And again, we don't care what's on top. It's just the same. So, of course, fire weakens wood because it consumes wood. The earth weakens fire because you can actually put out a fire by dumping dirt on it. You deprive it of oxygen and it stops burning. Metal depletes the earth because when we take metal out to use it in our lives, the Earth is less rich, I guess you could call it that. It has fewer elements than it had before. And water, you can think of water rusting rusting metal, or wearing away metal. I mean, if you have a piece of metal put into a river, it will go away after a certain period of time. Just like rocks get smoothed in water, well, the metal also gets carried away. So water will weaken metal, and usually the rusting part is the easier one to remember. And of course, wood weakens water because it takes the water out of the ground. There's less water left. And so that's the cycle. It just goes around counterclockwise. And again, it doesn't matter what you put at top because it's a circle. Now, when it comes to the controlling cycle, it is a 5-point star. And I don't know how common this is, but we did a lot of 5-point stars in elementary school. Maybe it was just because that helped us with writing later. I don't know, that might have been the theory at the time. But again, it doesn't matter what elements are in what order, as long as when you go around this way, it makes sense. It gives you the growth cycle. And I was taught to make a 5-point star by starting down here. So if we take metal, metal chops wood. Wood depletes earth. It takes carbon, it takes water, it takes other elements from the earth, so it depletes the earth. Earth will muddy water. Water puts out fire, and fire melts metal. This is how I remember it, and I think most people do it that way. So if you can remember this, it makes it much easier when you're trying to analyze what you do when you have a combination of stars. Again, the safest way is to use the weakening cycle, but the controlling cycle works a lot faster, and it's usually more abrupt, often a little more painful. And usually it's more painful on one side of the interchange, let's say, than the other. Now, I will say this, there is not 100% agreement among all schools or all masters about the timeliness of stars, but there are some rules that are agreed upon. There is one set that, as far as I know, is always agreed upon. The current period star and the two future stars from the current period, are timely. So this means in period 9, 9, 1, and 2 are timely. In period 1, it'll be 1, 2, and 3. Period 2, it'll be 2, 3, and 4, and so forth. Now, most schools, but not all schools, state that stars 1, 4, 6, and 8 are generally timely, regardless of the period. Now, there are some variations. For example, we are in period 9, and the 8 is as weak as it ever gets, but it's still generally considered a timely star. So it's just not as strong as normal, but it's still a good star for the vast majority of the schools out there. All schools agree on this too, that 2, 3, 5, and 7 are untimely unless the current period makes them timely. And this is definitely agreed upon in the flying star chart and the purple-white chart. There's a disagreement when it comes to the annual month stars, which I'll cover in just a little bit. But this means that although star 2 is normally untimely, we are in period 9 and star 2 is timely. So instead of being a illness star, it becomes a wealth star. And so if we look at these 4 generally untimely stars, star 2 is generally considered an illness star, not necessarily in period 9, 1, or 2, but that's where it's timely and untimely is not what is completely agreed upon. Star 3 usually is associated with arguments. So if you have a sector in your house with a star 3, that might be the area that you have more than average arguments. And that is, of course, quite unpleasant usually. Star 5 is generally considered to be the worst star. It can lead to all kinds of misfortunes. It can lead to job loss. It can lead to illness. It can lead to a breakup of a relationship. All kinds of misfortune. It could be in a car accident even. Maybe it's not one where you are terribly hurt, but if your car is totaled, it means that you've got to go to the hassle of buying a new car. So it means usually bigger problems than any one of the others. Now, star 7 is associated with theft, and that includes being scammed by somebody. So that is that is one of the more unfortunate ones, but this one is something that in general you can do a little more about. That is, if you keep your windows and doors locked, that does help reduce the theft because it takes more effort for somebody to break in. Now, when they're timely, star 2 and 5 are both well stars, but 2 and 5 are never timely by like this rule at the same time. In period 2, 2, 3, and 4 are timely. In period 3, 3, 4, and 5 are timely, but then 2 goes back to being an illness star. So those two are never timely together. Star 3 can lead to endurance, physical strength, the ability to stick to problems, which is actually a really important thing. The tougher you are, the more resilient you are when you have setbacks. That's star 3. That can help you with this. And you can tap into this even if it's untimely. You just have to do it in a proper way. And star 7 is communications. It can improve your ability to communicate. Typically, this means you are choosing words better, more words that express your ideas or your emotions or your opinions in a more clear way. But this can also help with somebody who has trouble pronouncing words properly. Or if you're trying to learn a new language and there are certain sounds in that language that aren't part of your native language, this is a good sector to be in. Even in general, even when it quote unquote is untimely, this can still be helpful if you use it properly, that you use it for just this particular thing, learning to pronounce sounds or words or communicate in a more efficient way, but you use it for nothing else, and you use it when you're only in that room by yourself, and so you don't have interactions with people, because that makes it more complicated. Although I suppose if you're all doing the same thing, it could work. Now, star 9, which is the one I haven't talked about yet, is typically considered an enhancer star. That is, when it's with a timely star, it makes that timely star stronger, better. But if it's with an untimely star, it makes the untimely star stronger and worse. So it is a kind of a weird star. It is the only one that does this flip-flop depending on what it's with. So this is the summary of what you would do if you have a star 1, which is usually considered timely except for by a pretty small number of practitioners. But right now it's definitely timely because we're in period 9. You don't really need to worry about this, but once we reach period 2, this is when star 1 might need a little help. So this is what you would use. You could use wood as a safe element, and a fast element is earth. For the earth star 2, metal weakens earth, wood controls earth. The star 3, which is wood, fire weakens wood and metal controls it. Same thing is true for 4. 5 has the same rules as 2 because they're both Earth stars, as does star 5. And for the 2 metal stars, water weakens metal and fire controls metal. And then for the star 9, Earth weakens it because fire produces Earth, and water controls it. So if you have a single negative star, the safer version is to use this. The fast version is this. So that is very easy if you just have a single star. But when you have combinations of stars, that's when it gets more tricky, and I will get to that in just a bit. But when we talk about wood, we're talking about a living plant. Now, if this plant is in the north, if your sector that you're trying to use wood for, which is really only star 1, and right now you don't have to worry about it because star 1 is timely by all definitions, you would use a living plant. But you would have to use a plant that can handle not a lot of light. That is, it can survive in low light conditions because this could be in the north. You have to make sure that your plant can handle whatever light that you have. So that is key. You have to make sure, you don't want a plant that likes shade to be put in a southern window. So you have to know what plant can survive there. And this is usually a plant inside your house, a house plant basically. It's preferable to have maybe a small tree or several normal size house plants to cover this. But again, you're not going to have to worry about this until we reach period 2, which is still almost 40 years away. Now, Earth, if you want to use Earth to tone down something, which is basically star 9, which you are not going to do now, but you might do in, I think it's 17 years and some months from now. What you're going to use is true crystals or natural rocks. That is, maybe you've got some nice rocks that you collect, from riverbeds. They're nice and round and they're pretty, that kind of thing. Or true rock crystals. Glass, plastic, or resin crystals do not work. The closest thing to Earth is glass, but glass comes from sand, which does come from the Earth, but you have to add a lot of fire to that sand to create glass. So that glass is a combination of fire and earth. And the only time we use earth, at least to weaken it, is for star 9. And that's already fire. So you wouldn't want to use glass. Theoretically, you could use it for star 1. But again, I don't recommend using the fast element because it tends to be rather painful. And you don't need to use this for some time. Like star 1 won't become timely until we reach untimely, I should say, until we reach period 2, and depending on the school, and most schools still say it's timely. So usually you don't need to deal with star 1 to mitigate it. Star 2 is a big one, and star 5 is a big one. Now, when we talk about using metal to weaken, this is the earth elements, the 2, the 5, and the 8. It can be any kind of metal, that it doesn't matter what it is, any shape. What matters is the total mass or the total weight. They are two different things, at least to a physicist, but you just need the right total amount. And there are some that, say 6 pieces of 10 kilogram or whatever. Don't worry about it. It's elemental. It doesn't matter the number or the shape. It really doesn't. So, but of course, 60 kilograms is the normal cure for star 5. That is the 5 yellow. That's a lot of mass. Most people cannot lift that much weight unless they're perhaps on the moon. And so this would be, you would just do it in a bunch of different pieces. Now, fire is basically true fire. So what I recommend is you start a candle and you do not leave the candle unattended, because that's a very good way to burn down your house. And then you light a salt lamp while the candle is lit, and you can leave the candle burn for as little as 30 seconds. A minute is nice, a couple minutes, if you can spare a couple minutes, it's good. And then you blow out the candle and you leave the salt lamp lit. And usually, if you're trying to mitigate a single element, you are going to do this, you're going to light a candle once a week for at least 30 seconds, but you leave the salt lamp lit. I do not know of any safe way to have open flame that you can leave unattended. The closest that might come to that is perhaps a gas burning fireplace. That in theory could do it, but that's still, I don't like leaving that unattended. And also there'll be times of the year when you don't want the heat from a fireplace. So, it doesn't make sense. Now the salt lamp, and we're talking about a real salt crystal that comes from the earth. It actually produces, when it is lit by a incandescent or halogen light bulb, it will actually produce ions. So that helps clean the air, and that is an active thing. So this is why salt lamps are recommended for this. I have seen some things that are stated as, oh, you can use this. I would not use a oil lamp if you have kids or cats or dogs, or you're in a place that ever gets an earthquake, which is basically everywhere. Occasionally you'll get one. If that thing gets knocked over, you're going to have a house fire. And if you're not home, you may lose your house. So this is why I say do not leave a candle or any kind of open flame unattended. Very, very, very dangerous. I've seen some things advertised as, oh, you can use this for a fire cure, and it's a real flame, but that flame goes outside of its container. And if you don't place it properly, you could start something on fire. So a salt lamp is 1,000 times safer, and you keep re-energizing it with a candle. Once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, you will kind of get an idea of what you need to do. Now, water is slowly moving water. A fish tank is a good example. And this can be, it should be fresh water, that I should say. And it could be one of the tanks that have a bubbler and, all that kind of stuff. It will be too heavy to move most of the time because water is quite heavy. So this should be on a cart that you can roll around from one location to another, and they do exist, so it's fine. And of course, you also could use fish bowls, maybe 1 or 2 fish bowls to make up quite a bit of water. But you do need to have fish in there, living fish. And there are plants you can put in that live in water that provide the oxygen, so you don't need a bubbler, which is, somewhat expensive. And you have to, make sure that it still keeps working all the time. So, but, if you just have that greenery, you get it all taken care of, and you don't have to, and the fish can live for years. We've had fish in a fishbowl that have lived for years because we kept putting I don't know what that's called, but some sort of greenery. It's some sort of seaweed type thing. Now, if you can find a residence that has a special formation in the purple-white chart, and purple-white charts are permanently activated by time, and also has one of the 4 best flying star chart formations that is activated, and that's the combo 10, the pearl string, parent string, or 7-star robbery. But those have to be activated either by the shape of the house or by landforms. So you have to know what you're doing there. Then your life is actually very, very easy. And there's a lot of practitioners out there that at least go to the trouble of having at least the flying star chart being a good activated special formation, because it just makes life so much easier. Now, if you can do this, then you really need to only worry about the annual afflictions and the untimely annual month stars, and they can come together. That is, an annual month star can both be untimely, or they can be in different sectors, and you treat them a little differently when they're separated or when they're together. Now, it is not completely agreed upon about what star 2 means, and I would assume this would apply to all of the typically considered negative stars of 5 and 3 and 7. And it's agreed upon from all practitioners that I know of in the flying star chart and the purple white chart. What's not agreed upon is what they mean in the annual and month stars. And of course, it also means the day and the hour, but we don't worry too much about days and hours when it comes to stars, when we're talking about certain sectors, where we really focus on the annual and month star. Some say that star 2 is still untimely in these 2 charts, even though they're timely in these 2 charts, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So some masters state that star 2 is still an illness star in the annual and month stars. Other schools and other masters, of course, state that star 2 is a wealth star in all charts. And this is the one I agree with because it's the one that makes sense. The most strictest statement of what is timely is the current period and the next 2. So why wouldn't it be timely in the annual month stars? It doesn't make sense to me. However, unfortunately, we really haven't had a situation where we can test this definitively yet, but we will. So star 2 is not free of an annual affliction until 2029. So that's still a couple years away. In 2025, the annual star 2 was in the center, and of course the center doesn't have its own annual affliction, but the center does have its effects spread throughout the entire house. And if there is an illness, you don't know whether or not it's caused by star 2 or if you've activated an annual affliction rather than the star 2, because all annual afflictions can lead to illness. The 5 yellow is the worst one, and of course, if you buy these guys, you would say that, well, star 2 is simply illness star, but then everybody in the household should get sick. And if it's only one person, then there's some question there. So it wasn't really able to test this in 2025 because you don't know the source of this. So we'll have to wait till 2029 to really know for sure. But here is, I'm going to start talking about combinations of untimely stars. Now here I do give you the 2s just in case some of the schools are right and star 2 is untimely in the annual and month stars. But these are still definitely a problem, the 3-5, the 3-7, and the 5-7 in any of the charts in period 9. So, but here, the star 2 would have to be in the annual star, And we're also assuming there's no special formations activated. Because if this is in the annual star and you have a special formation activated, then star 3 is not untimely. So this is why I'm saying it assumes that there's no special formation activated in your flying star chart or your purple white chart. So if you were to say what to do, I recommend metal, and you might wonder why. Most people would say, okay, what weakens earth? Earth, it's metal, but wood, it's fire. So what if we just add fire? A lot of people would say, let's just add fire. But fire produces earth. It's going to weaken the wood, so the wood can't control the earth as well. So what will be strengthened in the end is earth. And that's star 2. And if star 2 is still an illness star, that's not good. If it's a well star, it's actually good. So this is the big conundrum we have right now. We still won't know until 2025 or 2029 what the star 2 really means. I hope that I will be well active and still in my business in 2029, and I will definitely experiment with this. So I would say what you do instead is put a little bit of metal. Metal weakens the earth. It also weakens, well, it controls the wood, and the wood controls the earth. So everything it tames everything down. And of course, we're talking about 2 and 3. The 3 is an untimely form of wood. So that's what I think should be done. And not a lot of metal, because we're not seeking to chop the wood really strongly. We're just weakening the earth and slightly controlling the wood, not a big energy. Now, 2 and 5, this is actually why they say when you have the 5 yellow, which is simply the annual star 5, you put 60 kilograms in there. And that's because all practitioners know that during certain months of the year, the month star 2 will come along with the annual star 5. And so together, if you have the 60 kilograms, it takes care of that. In general, I think most would say that the 5 alone is maybe 40 kilograms, and the 2 is half of that. It's 20 kilograms. So together it makes 60. And you don't have to add more metal when the star 2 comes along, the month star 2 comes along, because it's already been tamped down. So this is why 60 kilograms is there. And I would say, yes, star 5 is probably twice as bad, maybe a little bit worse than star 2 in general. Now, when it comes to the 2 and the 7, we have the earth and the metal. So the reason why I choose water is water will reduce the metal, and metal reduces the earth, and the water also tames the earth. It controls it. But we don't want a lot of water. Probably 1, maybe a 2-gallon fish bowl is adequate. These is something you can carry. A big fish tank is way too much. And of course, most people can't move one of those big, even 2 people have a hard time moving it because water is actually very, very heavy. So you don't need a big fish bowl. You just need something that you can put there. Has to have live fish. And if you put greenery in there, the fish can live for a really long time. So here, the 3 and the 5 is wood and earth. Same thing here. It's just switched around. I would say 5 kilograms is enough. Now the 5 is worse than the 2. And if it doesn't seem to work well enough, you can add perhaps another 5 kilograms. So it could use a little more metal, but I would say wait, see if the 5 kilograms does enough. Now the 3 and the 7 is wood and metal. And so this one is, we haven't covered this combination yet. And I would say you just do a salt lamp without a monthly candle. The first time you light the salt lamp, yes, you turn on, you have a candle lit already, but you don't have to let the candle go more than 30 seconds. That's enough. But the salt lamp has to be turned on before you blow out the candle. And you can just leave a salt lamp there. You do not need to do a weekly strengthening of that with a candle, because you're just tamping it down. Usually this will be enough. And that's because, of course, metal already chops the wood. Now, fire controls metal. It also weakens the wood. So it's the same kind of deal that happens here, but it just is different elements. And so that keeps both the metal and the wood tamped down. So that's why I recommend the fire that is a salt lamp. And here we have earth and metal. It's the same thing as here. I would recommend a relatively small fishbowl, and something that you can easily carry, basically what we're talking about. Of course, if you have a really big house, you may need perhaps a 4-gallon rather than a 2-gallon, but you have to have a really big house. And I have a feeling that most people who watch my channel are not wealthy, so they don't have huge houses. Now, if the school that states that star 2 is timely in all charts, then this right here is irrelevant. Only this is relevant in periods 9, 1, and 2. And in fact, in period 1, even the 3 becomes timely. So that would definitely be out. So I just letting you know that yes, these things here may not be a problem. Now, only important rooms need mitigation, and this is something really important. You don't want to have to do this in all your rooms, and there's no reason why you have to. There are only a handful of important rooms, and those are the ones you need to make sure you can mitigate. And also, this is a thing that is very important to understand. If you've been using a room on a regular basis, and when an annual affliction or especially the 5 yellow comes along, as long as you use that room on your regular schedule, your normal schedule, it's not activating. So this means you can use a kitchen that has an annual star 2 or an annual star 5. Last year, 2025, that is the snake year, we had the 5 yellow in our kitchen. But we cook basically every single day. We cook something every single day. And we actually rarely go out to eat, because going out to eat has gotten to be very expensive for our income. So we just don't go out to eat. We both can cook. Well, okay, my husband cook better than I can for like standard dishes. And I cook some specialty dishes, but they take a long time and I don't like to do it all the time. So they're relegated to special occasions. So now, if you have an activated special formation in both your flying star chart and your purple white chart, then you treat the annual and month stars with a weakening cycle as long as they don't show up together, as long as they're not a pair. And so if you have the star 2, and assuming that the star 2 is still untimely, you would just use some metal, and 20 kilograms should be enough. The wood, you use fire, so you light a candle and you have a salt lamp, and you probably re-energize that salt lamp once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. You can test this out. You will find the right timing that keeps the problems at bay, that is arguments in this case, by just testing it out. There's no reason to go overboard with this. The star 5 is, of course, an earth star, so metal, but here the star 5 can do a lot of nasty things, so this is why you need about 40 kilograms. And if it is the star 7, its element is metal, so you need water. And this is usually a relatively, well, a decent size, maybe a 10-gallon fish tank, which you probably have to move around on a rolling table because they're heavy. I mean, water is very, very heavy. Now, this assumes either the annual star is untimely and the month star is timely, or vice versa. If both of them are untimely, you go back to the previous set of numbers that I just showed, and that will tell you how to treat it. Now, there will be months during every year when the annual and month stars create a set of untimely stars, because there is no special formation in the annual and month stars that make things timely, makes all the stars timely. So then you're going to use the combination table, which I just talked about. So, and this still assumes that you have the flying star chart and the purple white chart having activated special formations, so that you do not have to worry about those two charts, because that makes it more complicated. And in just a little bit, I will talk about how you deal with three stars that may be untimely. And if you are going to place this mitigation, the best time to place it is just before the untimely month star arrives. And if this location has an annual affliction, I would do it as close as possible, hopefully only a few minutes before the new month starts, where so that activation that you are doing by placing the element there has a very short window of where it can affect it. Because once the new month start, and we're talking about month stars here, before the before anything can kick in. Because if it's an annual affliction and you place something there, it can theoretically activate the annual affliction. But if it's at the end of the month, usually that energy sort of ends, or at least is weakened once a new month comes. It's not great, but and if you know it's coming, you could actually place the mitigation there before the start of the year, where you don't have current annual afflictions. That's where you would place it. That is near the end of a year, just before the tiger month starts. You place whatever this mitigation states that you need, and then you just leave it there. That is probably the safest thing, but you have to make sure that the current year and the following year, they don't share a single place with the annual affliction. If they do, then you need to do it very, very close, as close as possible, just before the next year starts, before the tiger month starts. Then you limit the time that you can have a problem from activating a current annual affliction, of the year just before a new year starts. Now, again, some schools state that star 2 is timely in period 9 in all charts, and I am with these guys. So that's just the way it is. But this is why when they say, for here, if you noted on the last channel or on the last slide, I said you need 40 kilograms for 5 and 20 for star 2, because we know absolutely for certain, if you have the 5 yellow, that is the annual star 5, at least 1 month out of the year, the star 2 will be there as a month star. So that's why you add the two together and get 60 kilograms, and it takes care of everything. So that's quite good then. Now here we are looking at a combination of 3 stars, and again, this is star 2. There's I have 2 in several places. This, you can have a month star 2 and an annual star 2, and your flying star chart or purple chart could have a 3. So this is possible, but it would only apply to a single month. And here I would up the metal a bit because we're controlling more earth. And that's what I would personally use. Here we have all metal or all earth. So I would say probably a little smarter that you have another 20 kilograms and you make it 80. But 60 probably could suffice, and you certainly don't want to have to add that metal in the middle of the year if it already has the 5 yellow. So unless you can do it in your sun and moon arrival dates, then it's okay. So here we have double 2 with a 7. Again, I would say a 1-gallon fish tank is adequate because we only want a little bit of water to weaken the metal, and the earth spends some of its energy muddying the water, so you don't need a lot of water. And at least this is my take. You might even find that doing nothing is better because the metal does weaken both of these. So kind of play it by ear, see how it feels. It's possible you might need 2 gallons if it feels that way. So you can experiment a little bit. These are not hard and fast rules. These are rules that are generated just because of simply how the elements interact. Now, the 2, 3, and 5 is basically the same elemental combination as up here. And so again, I just recommend 10 kilograms of metal because that weakens the 2 earths a little bit better. And the 2, 3, and 5, and of course, that all in this case, that 2 has to come from the annual star. At least one of the 2s do. Because in the flying star chart and the purple wave chart, star 2 is timely. And again, I just recommend a little bit of water. And so, this and this is basically the same kind of, this and this are the same kind of thing. So I recommend the same type of treatment. And again, here you could place the mitigation just before the untimely month star arrives. And so the month star is, we're talking about a star 2, 1, it has to be either the annual star or the month star. And so, but this of course assumes you don't have an annual affliction in the area where you're placing the metal. Otherwise, you simply place it at the beginning of the year if you know this is going to happen. So here we're dealing with star 3 as well. Actually, it could be in any one of your charts. And so we have a 3, 2, 3. So it's wood, earth, wood. I again recommend metal, not a ton, but some. For the 2, 3, and 5, which is actually, if you actually have this in your flying star chart, you have a decent chance of having a parent string. But of course, you have to have mountains in the right place. But I would say 60 kilograms is enough to take care of this because it weakens the wood and it weakens the earth and controls the wood. And for the 2, 3, and 7, again, I would say a 1-gallon fish tank or bowl, not a tank, but a bowl. You can carry that around pretty easily, or maybe nothing. And so you have to see what feels best, whether to have the fish there or not. And again, the fish has to stay living, so make sure you put some greenery in there that is living things, and it gets enough sunlight to keep that plant alive. Here we have 3, 3, and 5. It's wood, wood, and earth, which is just like what we have up here. So again, it's 10 kilograms. The wood, wood, and metal, I would say a salt lamp. You start the salt lamp with a candle, but you don't have to keep renewing it every week. Just do the initial one and that's it. And then here we have the 3, 5, and 7, which is wood, earth, and metal. It's basically just like this. So you use just a little bit of water to try to even things out. Now, again, you place it just before that untimely month arrives, because we're assuming this is not a permanent thing. But if it's a permanent thing, you can leave the element there permanently. So this is basically exactly the same as star 2. That is it's still, you're adding a Earth star. So the rules are basically the same. They haven't really changed. You might need a little more metal because 5 is a little bit more nasty than star 2, but you can play it by ear. If 10 kilograms doesn't work, try 15. But the 80 should be okay. So you have to do a little bit of paying attention to what's happening to know if you need to add a little more metal or not. Now, this one is a bit different because 7 is a metal star. So it changes the whole dynamics. And so that changes some of the things. Now here, the water comes from this combination. You've seen this before. But the metal, earth, and metal, I would say you need a little bit more water to reduce the metal. Here we have the 2 and the 5 with the 7. Now, usually 2 and 5 would need 60 kilograms, but we already have some metal, so I would start with 40 and see how it goes. And this, if you find it doesn't work, from like 1 year to the next time just add a little extra metal. And if you want to be on the safe side, I would say you can add up to 60 if you really were worried. But this metal here from the 7 does already tamp down this combination. That's why I recommend only 60, or only 40 rather than 60. This one stays the same. We're just trying to weaken the metal, but not too strongly, and also weaken the wood. And actually, we're controlling the metal. Again, a salt lamp without doing a candle every week. Just start it with a candle, and that's it. Now, the important rooms are kitchens, the bedrooms other than the guest room, unless you also use a guest room as your home office. And many people do. So the guest room can be important. It depends on what other use it is used for. So basically kitchens, bedrooms of the people normally living there, and the home office, these are very important. It's important if you have a study room for your kids, that's also important. And also the main incoming chi sector. And this will be the sector with the main door for a house, or if you're living in an apartment, it will be the balcony door or the largest window if you do not have a balcony in the apartment. And so you have to know that for this case, you just have to know the general sector, not the subsector. And this is where the incoming chi subsector is very important because that gives you the general energy coming in. And when we do chi flow, this is where we start, at that either the main door or the balcony door or perhaps largest window. It's better to have a balcony or at least a functional, that is opening, operational window that is your largest window for an apartment. But there are apartments that are just glass walls and there's nothing that you can open, which I would never live in an apartment like that. I just don't feel like this is normal living. I have to have a window I can open. Now, if you never cook, then your kitchen becomes much less important and your dining room or dining area becomes more important. And that could be wherever you normally dine. I hope you don't sit in a recliner and watch TV while you're eating, because then there's not much talk in the family. And having grown up in a household where there was no TV in our dining area, this was the time that we talked. And I think it's very good to do that. I don't think you should have a situation where you don't talk to your kids or your other family members during dinner. It's one of the more relaxed times to talk. Now, all the other rooms, bathrooms, laundry rooms, storage areas, guest rooms, they're not important. Guest room is only important if you also use it for either your home office or a study area. You can use a guest room for hobbies, and the hobbies are nice to have good stars and good things, but it's not so necessary because your passion for the hobby helps you kind of overcome any of the issues that you have with worrying about the what you have there. I mean, because your passion is enough to carry you over, and it doesn't really matter what stars you have there. Now, your garage in general is also not important. And if it has permanent ventilation, and our garage does, we have a high and a low vent, that's basically what I would call it, that has a pretty sturdy but widely spaced mesh of metal. But the metal is, really tough, and that's so rodents and critters can't get into the garage. They can't chew through it. It's too tough. And it also has louvers to keep the water from coming into the garage. But there is no glass there. You cannot shut it off. It's permanently open, so the air inside the garage is the same as the air outside. And this is there because most places have some sort of oil, gas, coal, God knows what, but some sort of burning material that is for heat. And that is that needs to make sure it has good air, good enough ventilation that it doesn't create carbon monoxide, which will seep into your house and can kill you. So this is why, and this is code. In our area, it is code. We have to have that. If there is any kind of gas burning thing. And in our new house, we're still going to have the ventilation simply because it helps, it just simply helps the garage not smell bad. Honestly, it helps it. I mean, if you keep your garbage can in the garage, which we have to do because we currently live in a subdivision, and that's where we're supposed to keep our garbage can. So we like the fact we have permanent air circulation because it keeps the garage smelling better. So that doesn't expand the area of your house. It might, part of your garage might be included just because of the way it's laid out, but it is not, if it's like off the side of the living area, it does not add to the living area when you're trying to square off the house to do your flying star chart and all that kind of stuff. So garages are pretty, you have to be kind of careful with this. Now, there are places that perhaps have your heating unit in the basement. When that happens, it usually has ducting that goes from the outside that goes to the air intake of the furnace. And then they have a separate, exhaust air vents. Now we have an exhaust air vent for our system, but we do not have we just have the air intake open to the garage. And that's actually very, very normal, at least where we are. And so, but if you have two tubes and you don't have any other open space, like vents like we have in our garage, then the garage is part of the house because it has 4 solid walls. And that tube only goes to that unit, on both sides, and it doesn't interact with the air in the rest of the garage. So that's how you tell whether or not your garage is part of your house. It's a bit complicated, but most places, well, I don't know about most places. Most places I've lived has had this. Although I will say, when I was growing up, a we had a heating unit in our basement, uh, but we actually didn't use it a whole lot because when the oil crisis came, my parents didn't want to pay for that, so we just heated our house by a single fireplace in one room, and it was terrible. Uh, if you weren't in that room, the rest of the house was so cold in the wintertime. I think in our bathroom, occasionally I saw my breath. It was, which was like on the other end of the house. Um, One of the reasons why I hate cold weather is because I grew up in a place that was not very warm. Now, in general, home gyms are not considered important because you can avoid using them when they have untimely stars. You can exercise outside, you can exercise at a local gym. Maybe you've got a friend, you can exercise in their gym if they don't have untimely stars. And during the years when they do, they can come to your house, but they have to be a fairly good friend to do that. Maybe even the neighbor across the street could be okay. Now, there is one exception to this. If your physical condition is what gives you a paycheck, for example, you are a weightlifter and maybe you have sponsorship, you win weightlifting competitions, this is what gives you the paycheck, then your home gym is your workroom. So then it becomes very important. And it would be worth moving a gym to a location without an untimely star. That'd be worth it because you're going to be working out a lot and you might as well move your home gym in that case. Well, we don't have a home gym because we're we're more like thinking people rather than physical people. Now, the annual affliction 5 yellow is cured by placing a significant amount of metal. It really does depend on the size of your house. An average size house needs 60 kilograms because they know 1 month out of that year you're going to have the 2 also come into that sector. But the reason it works is because the 5 yellow is simply the sector with the annual star 5. That's the definition of where 5 yellow is. Now, all other annual afflictions are not based on stars and can't be cured by the placement of elements. And so I have other videos that talk about how to deal with that. Now, it is possible that the annual affliction of 5 yellow will cease, just won't be there anymore, starting in period 3 until the end of period 5. However, what we discover about the annual star 2 in 2029 should tell us which school of thought is correct, because some say the annual star 2 is still an illness star, others say it's a wealth star. So we'll find out in a few years. And we really won't be able to tell until basically the end of 2029. So 2030 we'll have a decent idea. Now, I would assume if we find out that the masters that say that's annual star 2 is still a well star, well, that will also tell us about this timeliness, about all these otherwise untimely stars. There isn't a lot of information about the last time star 7 was timely. I mean, the internet didn't exist at that point, and I haven't found any books that really talk about this. So we just have to wait until 2029 to have a much better handle on this. Now, landforms are not unimportant. Landforms will automatically activate certain stars in the flying star chart. Mountains, and the Chinese character of mountains also refers to hills or even higher ground that is higher than where your house is built. They will activate the sitting star, which I've never seen it in any other place but the upper left star in your flying star chart. Now, this is good if the star is timely, And this is, of course, another reason to hopefully have an activated special formation that makes all stars timely in your flying star chart so that any mountain helps. And if you were in a place like I am, I can actually see mountains pretty much almost all the way around me. So that means that I've got a lot of stars that are activated. And fortunately, I do have a special formation, an activated special formation in my flying star chart. Now, water, which includes ponds, lakes, and swimming pools, that will activate the facing star in your flying star chart, but that water has to be kept clean. So if you have a swimming pool and your filtration system breaks down, I've never had to deal with swimming pools, but you have to get it fixed as soon as possible. A lake that is polluted uh, is usually not good. The water has to be clear. Back in 1969, Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, actually part of it caught fire. And it's, as far as I can tell, there was a river in, I believe it was Cleveland, that started to burn, and that fire just went out. I mean, it was very close to the lake, and it just went down the river and into the lake, and it kept burning. And that's because there was a lot of flammable materials, not just oil. There was an oil slick, which didn't help, but there were just a bunch of other stuff. Plastic will burn, wood will burn, and they had to put the fire out on the lake. Now, I was still a kid at this point in time. I was still in elementary school, so I never saw pictures of it until I looked for it on the web. And this was also during the Vietnam War, and my parents wouldn't let us kids watch the news because there were horrible, horrible images from the Vietnam War. So they just kicked us out when they wanted to watch the news. So I never got to see it on TV at the time, but with the internet, you can see it now. If you have a pond, and you can do a pond, it doesn't have to be a swimming pool. You just have to make sure that the water stays clean. Filters usually do that quite well, but if you can get the balance right, you can have the right amount of fish and plants, and it can be naturally clean, just like a lake can be naturally clean. But that takes a bit of work. And you might not be able to do it immediately. You may need a filter for some time. Now, rivers are not water features that activate the flying star chart. Rivers should be analyzed using Sanhe feng shui and not San Yuan feng shui. What we're talking about here, if you're talking about stars, you're talking about San Yuan feng shui. So I do have a whole playlist that talks about Sanhe feng shui and how to analyze it. It's kind of complicated, but most places don't see rivers, so it's only used for people who can actually see a river. We see a river bed from our new place, but that will never be a good river for us, because if the water gets high enough to see the water, that means we are basically almost in a flood stage, and the water is muddy colored. I mean, it's quite quite rambunctious water. It's not a waterfall, but it's moving fast. And I've been in my city for over 30 years, and I've seen several floods, and they're very, very impressive, but that water is really scary. Because you fall in, you're dead, because, when it's flooding, because it's so turbulent. Now, oceans are also not good water features. The tide moves in and out and in and out, and I think it does it twice a day, every single day. So that energy basically switches from giving you energy and taking it away. So overall, you don't get any good energy. It all just fluctuates. And fountains in general are too energetic for residences, especially houses. If you are in a fairly large apartment, a fountain that, it's giving the energy to in the entire building, it might not be too bad, but it would be very, very good if they turn the fountain off at night, because uh, it will help everybody in the whole apartment complex sleep better. And if you do have a fountain and you like it and you want to keep it, just put it on a timer so that at night it doesn't run. And usually that will still be fine, and because you'll have a filter, you'll still be able to keep the water clean. But in general, it's very hard to work in a house that has a fountain. You're more easily distracted by things. So I don't recommend fountains for a house. Now, the base star is not activated regardless of the landforms. Basically, in your flying star chart, we don't care if the base star is timely or untimely. It has a different purpose in a flying star chart. It basically, you only look at it in terms of the energy flow or the elemental flow. Does it support one of the stars, or does it actually take energy away from the two stars? That's how you look at it. And I do have other videos that I talk a lot about this. Now, being present in a given sector with a focused, deliberate activity, and in this case, thinking and planning are included, this will also activate the facing and sitting stars in your flying star chart. And it also activates the stars in your purple white chart. And activity is a much better activator than really than mountains and water, although they do help. It helps kind of like set the mood for the place, and it makes it easier to tap into that. Now, activities for improved health or relationships activate the sitting star, and whatever that sitting star happens to be in that sector of your flying star chart. And activities for improving your wealth or your income will activate the facing star in wherever you happen to be, in that sector you happen to be. So you can do this even if you don't have a landform. That doesn't mean you can like activate a formation that needs landforms, but you can tap into that energy if you're in a place with the good stars. Now, activities in general are actually better activators than landforms, or at least they're more concentrated activators. That is, when you're there in the right location with the right stars and you're doing the activity, you can really move forward quite quickly. Landforms do help, but they are not, if you never do anything important in that area where you have an activated flying star, the facing star that is from a mountain or from water, it doesn't do you any good. You got to be in that sector and do an activity that is in keeping with the landform. So it's helpful, but it all by itself doesn't do enough. You have to be there actually trying to accomplish something. So that's it. I know this was quite a long one, and I hope that it ultimately makes sense. But if you have questions, you can either email me or you can leave a comment. Now, you might think, well, what if you have more than 3 untimely stars? I would say maybe avoid using that sector because that gets even more complicated. I only did up to 3. And if you have more than 3, that means the sector is really got problems with the flying star chart or the purple white chart and the annual month stars. So usually at least that 1 month you would avoid it. So it's still okay if you can, unless this is the only room you have access to. And so that can be rather troublesome. That is like you're only renting a room in a house. That's not ideal. Hopefully you have an apartment or a house that you can use as a whole. Makes your life a lot easier to actually move forward in your life. But sometimes you only can rent a room, and I've been in places like that when I was in school. But you're young, you can handle it then usually. Don't want to have to do that when you're really old.